Welcome to Real Community Talks, a video and audio podcast dedicated to making real conversations with community influencers available to everyone. I'm your host, Matt DeSilva, and I meet with some of the dopest community influencers across the greater Toronto area who, maybe by the world standards, might be micro-level influencers, but I know are doing macro-level things. Stay tuned each Tuesday night as we dive into each guest's life, talk process, and get to hear their unique story which molded them into the person they are today. The stories you hear are not necessarily formulas for success, but examples of individuals who are making their dreams possible despite obstacles. I firmly believe that everyone has a unique story that could potentially change someone's entire perspective on their circumstance. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to Real Community Talks, where real conversations with community influencers are made available to everyone. I'm your host, Matt DeSilva, and on today's episode, we have my guy, Leo Bailey, on the show. Leo, thank you for being on the show today, bro.
It's a blessing, man. Very humbled to be here with you. And, you know, you're doing some dope things with Real Community Talks. I
Appreciate
think,
that, bro.
especially in Malton. It's a great platform to, you know, showcase the great things we're doing, man, the youth, the young adults, and, you know, really giving back to the community and setting the foundation for the future.
I appreciate that.
For sure.
I think that's the first intro for me. Like I always intro people, and I'm like, appreciate that. Thanks for showing
big things, man. Big things going
on. So for those two ways people who don't know you, Leo is, and are you ready for this? He's an IT professional where he's doing digital transformation at RBC. He's one of the founding members and facilitators and continues to support Malton's very own swag, success with age and guidance. He completed a Bachelors of Commerce from Ryerson U, completed his MBA from Queen's University, was a technology consultant for Accenture, was a lab assistant at Ryerson U, was a market researcher for Logic Group.
Started from the bottom, for real.
Has completed multiple co-ops, including business architecture with Canadian Tire, a fraud analyst with RBC, a web editor with the City of Brampton, and among many other things, he's a youth development advocate. He's a youth leader / event host at his church who occasionally will bust out some moves at a praise break or two. He's a highly active community supporter. And most importantly, when I ask this man what title he falls under, he says he enjoys good food. So before we start with that, I wanted to kind of gauge where you are right now. What are your thoughts on the Kawhi and the DeRozan trade?
You know what? When it first happened, fam, I'm going to be real with you. I was hurt a little bit because I'm a big DeMar guy. But then I was talking to my boy at work. You got to put it this way. If you're taking the bus to work with a Metro Pass and your brethren offers you a BMW for your Metro Pass, I mean, I'm not calling DeMar a Metro Pass, but you know it's good. You know, so I mean, Kawhi is an elite player. You're talking about a top 3 player. DeMar is top 10 on a really good day. And truthfully, man, you know me, I love the Raptors. Raptors are my day one team, but the team's plateaued, you know. And I think Masai wisely and shrewdly took advantage of San Antonio's situation with Kawhi. And when you really look at it, he got Kawhi and a really strong swingman and Danny Green for next to nothing.
Yeah, that's true.
Really take it in, right?
See, for me, the way I put it is I'm like, I totally get that. Like Kawhi, it's a no-brainer. It's Kawhi, right? Two things I have issue with is he's coming off of injury. So when look when Isaiah Thomas came back from injury, you know what I mean? So, and then 2 is DeRozan was that franchise guy. Like he was that Vince Carter, and they pulled a Vince Carter on him, and then boom, he's gone. I mean, Vince Carter left, but I mean like, like he was that guy who was like, when he came from Compton, he's like, I think one of the posts says that he's like, Toronto, I'll always love you. Like there was heart in that, right? I
have you.
And then like Kawhi is like, no offense, but Kawhi's like a robot. So I'm like, yo, I need to see some emotion. Like when you come to Toronto, you can't be a normal player anymore. Like, the fans change you.
Yeah,
right?
The fans change you. And Toronto is a dynamic. This is a city where across all sports, whether it be hockey, baseball, basketball, fans want to see your personality.
Definitely.
You know, fans saw that DeMar was hardworking. They saw that he was humble. They saw he was about the community, right? Will they see that about Kawhi? I don't know. Kawhi is not necessarily out there like that, right? Yeah. And as an athlete, I think the athletes always have to take an onus to be, whether or not you like it, you're an ambassador for the game.
True.
Right.
True.
And DeMar took ownership to be an ambassador for the game in Toronto and Canada. Right. Even going back to Chris Bosh did the same. Vince Carter did the same. Right.
Yeah.
Kawhi, I don't know if he's ready to step into that role. Right. So that's why it hurts. The heart hurts. But logically, I get it.
Yeah. And I'm still a little bitter with the whole Casey thing, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
If you had to choose, would you have given Lowry or would you have given DeRozan away?
Lowry in a second. I mean, especially the salt Lowry threw last offseason where he checked San Antonio for a bit. I was like, my guy. Like, those are things you don't say in public.
Yeah, it's true.
You know what I mean? And don't get me, like, Lowry has that competitive edge, but he doesn't put on for the city like DeMar does, you know? Like, if Lowry got traded tomorrow, he would pack his bag, shrug his shoulders, and be off to the next team.
Yeah.
DeMar, and I mean, you even look at DeMar even from an emotional health standpoint. I know this is a cold game. I know this is a business, but it's going to take him some time to recover.
Yeah, it's true.
For sure.
True. Yeah. And I think at least with Pop, he kind of has that coaching. It's like you go from Casey to Pop, I think you're pretty good.
Yeah, right? So. For sure.
So for those who may not know you, why don't you talk a bit about your origin story? So who is Leo Bailey and where are you from?
Sure. So who is Leo Bailey and where am I from? So one of the few things, so one of my boys always tells me this. He's like, when you see me, when you get to know me, there's a few, maybe 3 or 4 pillars in my life, right? It's, first of all, Jesus, thank God for life and salvation. Second is my family. Third is the city, right? It's Toronto, it's the West End.
Hey.
Always repping MA. Shout out to MA.
Throwing guns.
Shout out to MA. And before I was in MA, I grew up on Kipling. Always a Kipling man. Shout out to the Rex, right? Shout out to Naki. Always a West End guy. So, who am I? My parents have worked hard to, and we didn't have a lot growing up, but worked hard to really provide an opportunity for me. And by opportunity, I don't just mean socioeconomic opportunity, but opportunity, giving me an environment to believe that I could achieve, whatever God has set forth for me to achieve, right? So when I describe myself, I describe myself as someone who's striving to pursue, what God has ordained me to pursue while being an inspiration to those around me, and the next generation. That's what I have a passion about. It's not just about doing me. I've always spoke against that doing me mentality, right? It's not just about doing you. It's achieving to be an inspiration, right? Achieving to be a blessing, right? I think we should constantly strive to be a blessing to those all around us, right? Wherever we go, we should be a positive sphere of influence, right? Whether it be in the community, right? Whether it be at church, whether it be at work. And that's me, man. That's me.
What high school did you go to?
I went to Naki, North Albion.
Oh, Naki. Okay.
Kipling and Mount Olive.
While you were living in Malton, or
no? So I moved to Malton in grade 12. So I still finished at Naki in grade 12. So,
so you're a Rexdale man.
I'm a Rexdale man. Yeah, but I still rep Malton. I rep both. But when I realized part of the reasons of starting Swag is Malton youth need a safe place to develop their dreams and goals, right? No, I still love Rex. I still rep the Rex. I still rep Kipling. But Malton has a close place, and they both do. Malton has a close place, but they're brother and sister, right? I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
So here. That's what I feel like. I mean, like obviously communities aren't like always the same or necessarily stark differences, but I mean like Rex and Malton, they're so close. It's like it's hard. Jerry was talking about it. He's like, nah. He's like, I don't think Malton's part of Saga, and I'm like, bro, you can't dictate whether you think it's part of Saga. It's part of Saga. We pay taxes for Mississauga. And he's like, nah, but he's like, it's so close to the Rex that it's like you can't tell the difference.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's like socioeconomically, it's definitely more closer to the Rex, right? And
for sure.
And I feel, I feel one of the things. I'll say this out here. Like, I would like to see more civic participation. And engagement from City Hall in Malton, right?
100%.
You kind of see the prosperity Mississauga's enjoyed over the past 20, 30 years. Yeah. And, if we're honest to ourselves, do we see a reflection of that in Malton? Probably not, right? Yeah. So that's one of the things. And it goes two ways. We have to do a better job of holding our municipal leadership accountable to that as well.
100%.
because they typically only show up during election time, right? So,
Facts.
Yeah.
Photo ops.
Yeah, I know. Tell me about it, bro. Yeah. But that's me, man. And one of the things I'll say, I always have an eye on the future. By God's grace, very humbling that we read all those accomplishments, but that's just the beginning, right? I think you never peak, right? You just hit a spot in the mountain, right? Or you look for a new mountain to climb. So it's constant. It's constant growth, right? Constant growth, constant learning. Yeah. And you have to believe, God always has something greater in store for you, for sure.
Definitely. So as a man from Rex, as a man who's been in Malton, you see some of the opportunities for these kids. How did you get into RBC? Like, talk about that come up. Was it something where you're like, I knew I wanted to get into the specific field and do the specific thing? Or was it like, well, how did that opportunity happen?
What? That's something I've spoken to quite a bit recently. And I'll definitely say I completely understand being in the area, Malton and Rex, predominantly blue collar. This downtown financial district life seems so far away when you're growing up, right? When you're in elementary school, middle school, you might go downtown once a year to go to the Islander exhibition, or if you're in that group Caravana, right? You don't really know about downtown too much, right? So for me, what's important is exposure, right? And I got that exposure in a few ways. In grade 8, we had a junior achievement program. Junior achievement's pretty, it still ran, that does financial literacy for middle schoolers, right? And they came in, they did a day workshop. This is when I was at Smithfield, and those were RBC employees. And that was the first time I thought, I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't mind being there one day, being in that position to share knowledge, with the younger ones about, because this is information I didn't know, right? I didn't know about the difference between savings and checkings accounts and how credit cards work, right? And this is a lot of common information that sometimes, a lot of us are first generation Canadians, right? This information is not readily available. So I'm like, how do I get back? How do I learn to give back? And then that same year, I was in this is when I was on my nerd hours. I was in an entrepreneurial group at Smithfield, so we ran the school store. That was a great program that taught us some basics, and one of our outings was going to the offices of Deloitte.
Oh wow!
Downtown. So Deloitte at the time was at in the TD Center at Front and Bay, and I mean, it was on like the 40th floor, view of the city. And that's when I was like, what, this is, something I can
You soak in that. Every time I go downtown Toronto, I'm like, I wish I worked here.
And you know what? I hate to sound lame, but every day on the GO train, I'll see the skyline and my eyes light up. Just like how it was when I was 13. And that's the first, that time in grade 8 was the first time I really got some exposure. And I think one of the things with youth in the area, it's exposure. Yeah. Right. We're not all exposed to different sectors, whether it be financial sector, whether it be STEM, right? Does it, STEM is more than a trip to the science center, right? And financial sector is more than a trip to the bank, right? Facts. Maybe it involves having a trip to the trading floor, right? Yeah. So that sparked that interest in me at a young age. And, by God's grace, doors have been opened slowly over the years, right? I'll say the thing is with a come up, Matt, it's not, people will see where you are today and think it happened overnight. It's not overnight, right? God's plan is long term, right? It's 20 years, it's 25 years, right? But it's you staying faithful to your goals, you staying faithful to him and his purpose in your life, and by all means doors will open, but it takes faithfulness and it takes patience for sure.
True. Yeah, I like what you said there, because you were talking about exposure. And one of my favorite shows right now on Netflix that I just finished was Last Chance U. And it talks about like D1 D2 football players coming back down to community college because they either got suspended, they did some weed or whatever, like, so they're trying to get sometimes like a third or fourth chance because they've already gotten the first and second. And one of the teachers, so she did this reading group, and it was with a bunch of black males, and they were reading a book, and she was talking about like, what do you guys want to be beyond football? Because she's like, you need an education, because if football doesn't work out, who are you, right? And they're like, I don't know. And she's like, well, what are most people that what are they doing? They're like, they're either a rapper, you know, or they're a basketball or a sports player or a football player.
Yeah.
And then she said something. She's like, that's the thing about some communities is they want to become what they only see in front of them. And you talked about exposure.
You need to be exposed.
So like, I think what you hit on was so key, because you said, you talked about STEM, you talked about stuff, but you said someone came to your classroom and experiential learning and financial literacy. I feel like schools, they tell you to go to do these advanced functions and algebra, but they're not teaching you real life skills like that, not all the time. And I'm not saying all schools don't do that, because I know some classes who break that barrier. But like, financial literacy is something that kids need when they're growing up, when they start their own businesses, when they're a parent and has kids, but they didn't ever learn that in high school. So I think I think you're so right. And maybe if those people didn't come to your class, you would have never thought of RBC.
I would have never thought of pursuing even a commerce degree, right? You know, when I was younger, I wanted to get into engineering. Yeah. You know, I never thought, you know, it sparked an interest of understanding how the economy works, right? Yeah. How the Canadian economy works, right? You know, sometimes you watch CP24 in the day, you see the stock ticker at the bottom. I had no idea what that meant, right? You know, it sparked an interest in understanding how that worked, right? What do those green arrows mean? What do those red arrows mean, right? I mean, and it's really a picture of the economy, right? Yeah. And I think it planted a seed of like just this relentless passion to keep learning. Wow. Right? Even up to this day, you know, I'm constantly learning, right? And I think, you know, with whatever God has put on your heart to pursue, it's a constant learning piece. You know what I mean? Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. So, why don't you talk a bit about like what you do with digital transformation at RBC? Obviously, I know you do a lot of stuff that we can't really talk about, but like kind of for those people who don't know what that is, what does that look like? Sure. So most people understand, you know, banking has changed a lot over the past 10 years. You know, we've moved from a lot of manual processes to a lot of automated processes, right? So what that entails is a lot of paper and pen processes you used to see in the branch, or even having to go in the branch. You know, we're moving, you know, because we know our generation, we don't really like going into the branch, right? Yeah, so a lot of that technology is there to make that happen. It's just making it more accessible to us, right? So making digital processes more accessible to us, right? Like image check scanning and even that's a game changer. Even I know, for shout out to iPhone, Apple folks. I'm not an Apple guy, but even I'm not gonna toot RBC's horn too much, but you can send you can do Interac e-transfers via Siri, right?
He's upselling them.
Yeah, I mean, this is the future of banking, right? And you know, I'm involved in some things like that.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. It's changing. No, the game is changing, and I think there's this perception that banking is boring, but in 2018, there's a lot going on, for sure.
So with technology, obviously, a lot of people. You look at millennials and young people, and you look at technology, and those are the things that they mesh together. Yeah. So as a company like that, is youth a focus? Because, you know, working at a front desk, some people are like, you know, I'm like, why don't you register online? And you tell like a 6-year-old senior, and they're like, I don't know how to use a computer. So is that like was there a shift where RBC was like, we're gonna focus on youth, or is this technology like something that it's like they're trying to reach all demographics?
There's a few pillars. There's definitely a demographic piece. I think what technology enables you to do, when done properly, you could scale out a lot faster, right? So it's a lot easier to scale out technology than it is to scale out bricks and mortars. However, there is a youth focus, and with youth, right, it's not just so much the technology, right, but it's the look and feel, right? With millennials, it's the look and the feel and the experience that gets them hooked, right? It's not so much being able to transfer money being with Siri, right? It's Siri being able, your banking being seamless with your life, right? Yeah. Almost like a life partner, as opposed to this ivory tower. So what Canadian banking especially is trying to move away from for youth is that ivory tower concept of banking, that financial institutions are far removed. I want nothing to do with them to, you know, let's make banking a partner in your life, like Amazon, right? Like Google, right? I know we're a far way away from that, but that's the end goal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, 2 questions before, so one thing that I liked about, an influencer I watched, Gary Vee, he said is like, for instance, Amazon's changing the game, and he's like, with Alexa and voice, he thinks that's the next step, right? So for instance, he's like, let's say you have you ordered a case of pop, right? And in your fridge you get like an Alexa fridge, right? And then it kind of takes like a scan of the barcode, and then once you take one out, it'll actually automatically order more pop for you. He's like, that's where he thinks that technology is going. So if you could be like, 20 years from now, where would you see like is the next technology for banking, just generally, not necessarily your company, but like?
I think so. Right now you have robo investing, right?
Wow.
Yeah, you have robo investing.
Bitcoin and stuff. No,
Bitcoin is blockchain technologies, right? So that's a distributed ledger system. We'll get into that later, right? What robo investing is, it takes your preferences, right, and invests in predetermined stocks or funds based on your risk profile, based on what you like to invest in, right? There's robo investing, and there's also automatic saving, I think, and the technology is there for this. What you're going to see is an intersection of the robo investing and the automatic saving that's able to save and invest based on your profile and based on your habits,
your spending habits too.
Your spending habits before even asking you.
That's crazy.
And that is the underlying technology is there for that. So you're going to see that. You're going to see that coming up soon, right?
And it just makes the user experience more accessible.
More accessible, right? And I think for youth, investing, one of the number one questions I get, and by no means am I an expert, is what should I invest in and how to invest? Young, old, high school, everyone wants to know, right? So I think in banking, right, if we can develop the tools to make that more accessible, more intuitive, right, I think that's where we're going to go. And that's one of the pillars of banking becoming more as a life partner, as opposed to an ivory tower institution.
For sure. Yeah. So not to get you in trouble, but random question. If you work at a bank, is it heresy if you own a debit card from a different bank? Like, don't tell me you don't have a TD card.
There's some other colors in my wallet.
That's as far as he's gonna go.
Aside from royal blue and gold, right? But true say you don't really take those out at work. Still, you hide those ones at the back of your wallet.
It's like when I worked for McDonald's. If you came in with Burger King, like the manager would look at you and just give you like a shame walk. Like,
you're done. You're done. No. It is encouraged to use your bank's products. I know back in the day they were a lot more strict with that. If you took out a card from, if you work at the red bank and you took out a card from the green bank, it'll be like, what are you doing? But they're becoming a little bit more relaxed on that, because the truth is a lot of people have multiple products and multiple banks, right? It is what it is.
True. All right, so one of the things that you mentioned in your prelim is you said that you want to see, like, one of your passions is you want to see youth operate in their purpose and to be a catalyst of change. So as someone who's super busy, I still see you coming out, like, obviously you live in Malton, but you're coming out to events in Malton. You still support swag and stuff like that. Like, how do you think, like, what's key to youth operating in their purpose and the being a catalyst of change?
So one of the things I always say, and if you remember the swag event we had in November last year, right, the graduation, is I think folks are under the impression, in areas like Malton and Rexdale, that youth are, for lack of a better term, doomed when they're 8 and 9, right? And one of the things we're trying to unlearn in the public is that, when youth, regardless, Black, Indian, first generation immigrant, whatever, 8, 9, might be at a disadvantaged background. No young man, young woman says, oh, when I'm 21, 22, I want to be in a dead end. I don't want, no one says that they don't want a decent life for themselves, right? So we're trying to unlearn that common perception that youth in this area are doomed, right? And I think we sometimes as a society negatively project that on the youth in this area. And we don't realize the damage it does. Right. And we have to unlearn that thinking. And I'm a big proponent of positive reinforcement. So we have to tell the youth that you can achieve what you want to achieve, right? The color of your skin, how much money your parents have, whether or not they're homeowners, right? Whether or not you're even doing in school at the time, that shouldn't dictate what you're going to be in the future. What you want to achieve. And everyone, even someone as young as 6 and 7, I strongly believe there's a divine purpose in their life, and God puts a purpose in their heart, right? And you can achieve that, right? So we have to one of the things, and it's an ongoing, you know, swag is doing great, but it's an ongoing thing. We have to continue to build an environment where the youth believe what they can achieve is achievable with the right guidance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's something that, you know, I think about every day, right?
Yeah,
and I pray about every day that the youth in this area will have an environment where they can achieve their goals.
And I respect you guys for doing that, because you guys are all busy, and it's like sometimes, you know, I like what you said. You said we have to unlearn.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's things that are so deep rooted. There's nuances in the way we act and what we watch and how we speak and how we treat people. And then you have people who are like, youth need to unlearn this, but the same people that are judging them haven't unlearned their bias, haven't unlearned their racism, haven't unlearned all this kind of stuff.
Their
so
microaggressions.
Like, but it's so true. Like, you know, I was talking to someone the other day about, you know, maybe something that I hold, like, I think what people forget about, you know, in terms of solving racism is we have to be able to be willing to take the L and be like, you know what, as a you know, as a Christian, as just even a minority myself, for me to say that there's no part of my life that I don't think in a racist way I'd be fooling myself.
Absolutely.
And I think when we have those conversations where you'd be like, there's a part of me where, like, if I see something or I'm in a certain scenario and I act a certain way, I don't like that about myself, but it's something like you just said, you have to unlearn.
You have to unlearn.
And culture,
you have to check yourself,
and TV
right?
shows and high school and friends teach you have to act certain
teach you
ways.
that, right?
I was talking with someone, they're like, you know, in Chinatown, like, they know that it's notorious for thefts, so they, you know, they grip their purse when they're there, and it's not to say that you're trying to be racist, but it's just like you've been conditioned that way, right? Yeah. And even the most woke people per se can't even have that. And I think we need to have those conversations where I'm like, I have a fault. I am in some ways someone who perpetuates racism, but I'm trying to grow through it.
Yeah. Right? Even the most woke person has biases, right? I think the difference is you have to be able to identify those biases and actively unlearn them, right? And it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. For whatever reason, we may have life experiences that some of those biases are a little bit more baked in, but we have to own them, right? And be aware that they exist. Some people, it's a journey to realize that they exist, and it definitely affects the way you view the world. You have a filter, right, in the way you view people. And if we move to a place where we're able to assess a person's character without biases, I think we would definitely have a better community, for sure.
And I realize I went off on a tangent, but one of the things I like about you guys is that, you know, you got older heads who are mentoring younger kids. And I feel like being a youth worker myself, just because, you know, like, you know, I'm someone who's 25, whatever, doesn't mean I'm connected to the kids, right? Sometimes when I first started the job, I had to go to Chris, I had to go to Jonathan. And they had to, like, let this kid know that it's okay to open up to Matt, right? But I didn't have that connection with them, because a lot of those kids, they know that Jonathan, you know, went to Lincoln. They know that Chris was from Rexdale. So they know that they lived a lifestyle that they could relate to. And as a youth worker, you have to find some part of your life that you can relate to someone, right? So I big you up, you guys up for that, because not a lot of guys would just be like, yo, I don't have time for these youth. But I feel like a program like Swag is so successful, and even more successful than some other nonprofit or even government agencies, is because you guys are just real. Like, you sit down, sometimes you guys order some Chinese food, some Popeyes, you talk life, you have little things, and you're teaching them financial literacy, you do all that kind of stuff. But that's so needed. Is just older heads that these kids can relate to, and seeing examples like you, like Omar, like Marquez, like all the other guys, right?
Like Jesse,
like
you
know, Marquez
Jesse,
just graduated with his master's.
It's
now,
true.
So kids need to see that.
Kids need to see that, and kids need to see that. I think sometimes it's a catch-22, because the kids will see guys like us and be intimidated, right? But I think what we do a great job at Swag, right? We show them, you know, we're not perfect. You know, we've made mistakes. You know, we've had trials. You know, we've had great guidance in these areas. We've had a lack of guidance in some areas, right? And that has allowed us to reassess and learn. And that's one thing, right? We have to let them know that it's okay if you make a mistake. It's okay, right? It's how you learn from it and how do you move on, right? Making a mistake doesn't mean that you have to run away from your goals, right? It doesn't mean that, you know, you pack it all in, right? That's why Swag is there, right? We can have those informal mentorship relationships. We could have those formal mentorship relationships, and I think those are key, right? And
sure.
we need more of those for sure.
Yeah. So something that you kind of touched on your IG story is, you know, talking about how the summer's been pretty hot in the GTA.
Yeah.
We got a lot of shootings. We got a lot of innocent people dying, getting shot.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when we were talking about like unlearning and perpetuating, I feel like, I don't know if you agree with this, but I feel like sometimes when a summer has, you got 2 or 3 shootings, people are almost more on the edge, so they're more prone to act in a violent way. So for instance, like this person's like, oh, this guy got shot, you know, they got to defend their street, they got to defend their hood, they got all that kind of stuff. So people almost become a little bit more aggressive,
more
protective.
defensive and aggressive. Yeah.
Like, what are your thoughts on that? I feel like sometimes when you label that the city's being hot, you get a lot of copycats, right?
Yeah. I think, you know, there's a little bit of glorification too. Sometimes, so right? There's a little bit of glorification that and you see it. One of the things I see like these younger guys doing, you know, like the street rap is becoming more popular in Toronto, right? You see it on IG, and there's the glorification of the culture, and with rap you see it. One of the things we have to do is we have to provide, through programs like Swag and even through the centers, provide a positive space, right? And I think solving violence in our community, and it's definitely tied to community issues. A lot of it is, you know, whether it be socioeconomic issues or mental health, etc., right? We have to provide more of a safe space, right? And if we do, you'll see less of that glorification. You'll see less of that defensive, aggressive behavior, because I think what we have to see more unity, right? And if we do perpetuate, you know, this block is hot, right? You might see that relationship of you know, right? But I think we have to work together to create a viable option. And I think you know, it doesn't happen overnight. That's one thing, right? And we're still relatively new, you know, to this land of Canada. There's still a lot of systemic racism. There's institutional racism, right? And you have generational issues that are being dealt with. But I think the ownership is on us to stop some of those preconceived notions. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And I like what you talked about. Like, we have to make sure that our programming and our centers and stuff have the right capacity and programming for our youth. Because, okay, when I'm been talking about like rap and Last Chance and stuff, in no way am I saying if you're a young person and you want to get into rap, that's cool, do you? But there's a business person in that rapper. There's a, you know, there's a market researcher in that rapper, right? There's, you know, there's an artist in that rapper. So beyond just the clout and the songs that sound good and just people rating your IG videos, there's more to it. So I think like even programs that support the business side of rap, the and the artistic side,
exactly, right? The making music, right? It's not just about what's hot and riding the wave, right? And I think sometimes we get caught in riding the wave, and that sometimes we get in trouble, right? So I love that we need to have those, because truthfully, youth demands change, right? So we need to have the infrastructure in place to allow for that, right? Not necessarily your traditional arts, but you know, things like rap, right? Things like social media, right? Things like, you know, you could tie that to analytics, you could tie that to demographics, right? And that will start building out those skill sets that you need, right? Because you can just, someone says, you know, I want to be a rapper, they're talented, right? But those talents will not be realized to their potential if you don't build out that infrastructure. That's a great idea, right? Yeah.
So as someone who is a youth leader at church, I wrestle with this idea because I'm a youth leader at my church as well. As a teacher of the word, that you have to live your life entirely in a box. And what I mean by that is, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have good judgment and be accountable for our actions, because people are, you know, young kids are watching our lifestyles. But sometimes I feel like, you know, I see some pastors, or I see some people who are youth leaders, they try to put forth this super righteous lifestyle on IG or social media. You know, you got your coffee with your Bible, and it's like, spending time. I'm not discrediting that, but I mean, like, I think people. I think one thing that
killing me right now.
one thing that I really make an effort to on IG, not to put a light on myself, but is to share my weaknesses and share my struggles. And you know, maybe forget that sometimes we forget that it's okay to be a little ratchet and righteous, right?
Yeah.
Like you can have your side, but you don't have to put, like, I feel like sometimes some Christians are living double lives, right?
What honestly, man, what I'm going to say with that is people see genuineness and authenticity. You know what I mean? So the more you perpetuate, I guess, quote unquote, a righteous lifestyle, especially if you're living a double life, people will see through that, right? So you got to be real. You got to be real with yourself, and you got to be real on IG. And I think social media and we're all ambassadors of Christ, right?
Yeah.
It's showing people, you know, Matt, this is me. You know what I mean? You know, I put on for Christ, you know, but this is me. This is me as a person too. Yeah. You know, sometimes I like a junior chicken too, right? Sometimes, you know, I'm supposed to be fasting today. You know, it's really tough to fast today. You know what I mean? Right. And I think, you know, there's sometimes there's this culture of you portray this hyper righteous being, but are you really giving folks someone that's relatable, right? Because I think there's a balance between relatable and maybe crossing the line. You can still glorify God while being relatable. You know what I mean? And I think we have to find that balance sometimes, you know?
Because with so many, one thing I feel like social media is a double-edged sword, because, you know, there's the negative sides of it, there's the positive, and you have this, you know, mega church phenomenon and some great people, like, for instance, me and Dre like watching Mike Todd. He's a great pastor. He's funny, you know, he'll be like the prophet Tupac, like he'll say funny things that'll connect with people. But I think and I'm not talking about him specifically, what I'm saying is I think sometimes we need to put a realistic template forward, because if we're just showing you that, oh man, like, yo, this guy can have style, he can be hood, and he could be a pastor, but it's like, yo, you're trying to be Michael Todd, but you're not trying to be so and so, you're not trying to be Matthew De Silva, right? So the issue with that sometimes is we see like an Elevation Church, we see like all these people, and, you know, like they're all together in communities. And I was watching this guy, you know, Brady Shear, he talks about like church marketing. He's like, only a small percentage of churchgoers actually go to a mega church. The majority of churches
go to smaller churches.
They're more of an intimate community, right? So I think we need to be mindful of that. And that's why I try to, like, you know, I was talking about on my story the other day, I'm like, guys, I procrastinated on this essay. I'm Christian. I should have been more of a steward with the blessing that God has given me in this master's. But I'm going to be honest. I waited till last minute. I didn't put in the effort. I did an essay in one night. But you know what? That's my weakness that I'm growing through, right? And Paul said it in the Bible. He's like, I boast in my weakness. And I'm not boasting in my laziness, because my laziness is something I got to work through. But you know what? Instead of showing you that this super perfect community guy like Matthew, no, I have weaknesses, and I want to let you know that even a 25-year-old man, even a youth worker, even a Christian
has weaknesses.
Yeah, weaknesses.
And Christianity is a journey, right? And I think sometimes we forget that it's a journey. It takes time for us to be groomed, and I think we get caught in this culture of instant gratification, right? And it doesn't happen overnight, right? But listen, Bible says that, you know, the plans that he has for us are good, right? And I think sometimes those good plans, we want them to happen tomorrow, right? And we want to be perfect tomorrow. We're not going to be perfect tomorrow, right? And then, like, Isaiah 1 says, the obedient will inherit the fullness of the land. That doesn't mean you're going to inherit the fullness of the land tomorrow, right? But I think sometimes we want to inherit the fullness of the land tomorrow.
Feeling the anointing.
You know, I'm not going to say you can inherit the fullness of the land tomorrow, but it's a process, you know, and that involves, the Christian walk is a steadfast, and it takes long suffering, right? It takes patience, right? And in that long suffering and patience, there will be days where you have moments, you know, where you procrastinate, where you're not feeling it, right? And I think it's important that people see that. People see that, you know, because it will be like, you know what, if Matt can have a struggle and bounce back, I can do it too, right? It's just like what we talked about banking, right? There's ivory tower Christianity too, right? We got to move away from ivory tower Christianity.
True. Because I think sometimes, and what I try to talk to a lot of my youth too about is we have this mental negative positive tally in our head, like, oh, I did this and this and this, and I struggled this. And the funny thing is, sometimes you look at it And you could have all these positive things going, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, if I read my Bible this many times a day, or if I memorize this amount of scripture verses. But the thing is, and what we always talk, what I believe both of you, me and you agree is, it's more so about the relationship with God.
Absolutely.
And a relationship has its ups and downs.
Yeah.
Right? So
it's more so the relationship, and God realizes that, right? And don't get me wrong, it's great to read and pray, but what's your purpose, right? If you're reading and praying to say, I've prayed an hour, I'm awesome, or I've read for 3 hours a day, that's great, and you're keeping a tally, right? Is that really the focus, or is it the focus on getting to know him more intimately?
For sure. Yeah, it's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that quality time, right? Or is that selfish time? Is that me first time to tick a box off a tray, right?
Yeah.
We have to check ourselves sometimes,
It's true. Yeah. So I know I sound like I bash education on this podcast, and I'm not trying to. And you know what? Every person's experience is different, right? From my perspective, I might be bitter with my educational experience, but someone else can have a great one. But one of your favorite quotes by Malcolm X is, "Education is our passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today." And I definitely agree with that part, with prepare for it today. So what does that quote mean to your life personally?
So for me, we're in a situation here in Canada where we have an opportunity to pursue a grade 12 education more or less for free, right? And then post-secondary education is readily available. Now, I'm not saying post-secondary is for everybody. It's not for everybody. However, in terms of equipping us, first-generation immigrants, people of color, with some of the skills to succeed in society, there's a lot of availability in Canada. So it helps us prepare for the opportunity that's out there, and it gives the institution less opportunity to tell us no. To tell us no, right? That's what it is, right? It's unfortunate that we have to grind for 4 years. Some of us 6, some of us 7, some of us 8. But
I'm on my seventh.
I did 7. With masters, I did 7. But it gives us. I see the fruits. I see the fruits of it, and you could kind of see the doors that are being opened. It opens doors, and it gives folks, those in power, less of an opportunity to point at you and say no. Right. And it also gives you an opportunity to bring other people up too. It puts what I find. And education is by no means perfect. But it's a conversation starter. 100%.
Oh, for
right?
sure.
100% a conversation starter. Is the system perfect? No. Do you see the full value sometimes of what you pay for? That's maybe another Real Community Talks episode, right? But it is a conversation starter. And sometimes all you need is a conversation starter.
For sure. For sure. So before we go into rapid fire, I just have one more question for you, something I always like to ask in the show. If you could go back in time, what would you tell grade 9 Leo just about to enter high school? If you can hop in a time machine, what's one thing that you would say to yourself?
So this is like a 2002 Leo. I was on my nerd hours back then. I didn't really have it figured out socially. I'll go back in time and tell him, just be yourself. Don't worry, everything will work out. Because I was really insecure back then. But God brings you through experiences in life that allows you to know your identity in him more.
Wow.
And that gives you that security,
confidence,
that gives you that confidence, right? And some people get there quicker than others, and I'll just tell that grade 9 Leo, just God has you. Just
I like that. All right, so we reached that point in the episode where it's rapid fire. So first thing that comes to your mind, sir: Pepsi or Coke?
Coke.
Advil or Tylenol?
Advil.
Apple or Android?
Android.
Toronto or Saga?
Toronto.
PlayStation or Xbox?
Xbox.
2K17 or 18?
18.
Vince Carter or DeMar DeRozan?
Vince.
Right away.
Vince, no doubt.
All right, you have to run a pickup game, and you can choose any 4 NBA players, only active players, to be on your run. So you're one. Who's your
LeBron.
LeBron. Okay.
Yeah. And
you got
KD.
3 more.
KD.
Okay.
And
2 more.
And Steph.
And you got 1 more.
Probably Kyrie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who's winning the Western Conference, Golden State or Lakers?
Golden State.
Oh, okay.
Golden State for sure.
All right. Top 3 rappers of all time.
Rappers?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's so. Favorite wise, I'll say Nas. Then I have to give it to Pac. Then number 3, I'm not a big fan.
Pastors listen to Pac? No, I'm joking.
I'm not a big fan, but you can't deny Jay-Z's track record, right?
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Favorite place you've traveled, local or international?
International is probably Israel, the Holy Land. That was blessed.
I need to do that trip.
Amazing,
I gotta save money though, but
it's pricey, but it is amazing. Locally in Canada,
anywhere, yeah.
Locally is probably Vancouver. Vancouver is actually beautiful.
Yeah. Favorite book you read or are reading besides the Bible?
Besides the Bible, I'm reading The Outliers right now with Malcolm Gladwell. That's a dope book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Favorite song you're listening to right now?
There's that Elevation worship song. I'm behind on my music. I can't lie, right? The remix with Tash, I Still Believe, right?
Okay.
Do it again.
Yeah. Do it again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do it again. Yeah. I bumped that in my car, right? Probably
with Tasha
blast
Cobb?
out. Yeah.
Okay.
Blast out the woofer. Yeah.
Who is one person that everyone should go right now on Instagram and check them out or follow them? If you could recommend one person.
Oh man. Oh, I'm gonna be selfish. I'm gonna say follow at YOI. No, I think from an influencer perspective. Oh, Real Community Talks, man.
Hey,
for sure.
Shout out.
Yeah.
Favorite Saturday morning cartoon when you were young?
Oh, Spider-Man. The Adventures of Spider-Man, for sure. The Fox Kids one.
Yeah.
That was cartoon perfection.
You know what's funny? Like when you're a kid on Saturday morning, you'll wake up at 7 a.m. to do that. But it's like now I'm sleeping until 12.
Now, yeah. Saturdays I try not to wake up in the AM. That's
I know,
just
it's true.
rough. Yeah.
So deep theological question, controversial.
Okay.
Caribbean Star or Mr. Jerk?
Oh, Mr. Jerk.
Sure.
You know what? So I know Mr. Jerk had a unfortunate ownership change. Prior to ownership change, it was Mr. Jerk. But post ownership change, Caribbean Star.
Okay. Yeah. Donnie McClurkin or Kirk Franklin?
Donnie. Donnie's my guy. Donnie's my number one.
You know what? I typed it on Google. I'm like, okay, the only I know this is bad, but like the only like up there like black Christian artist I know like that kind of has like that gospel is Kirk Franklin.
Yeah.
So I'm like typing it on Google, like type top 10 like when I'm doing my research. I'm like, I'm gonna put Donnie McClurkin. I didn't expect him to do it, but he did. Okay.
Donnie for sure.
I chose it correctly. Yeah. Most influential person on your life?
Oh.
There might be many, but like
there's many.
Like one that you can say.
A close influencer or far influencer?
Whatever you want. First thing that comes to your head when I say most influential person.
Honestly, the first person that came to mind is my pastor. Shout out Bishop Bob Tacky.
Hey.
Definitely always there for my family.
Yeah.
Obviously my family for sure. My sister, my mom, my dad, my grandma. Always been there for me and definitely saw that quote unquote I was a special kid from a young age and made sure that
that's good though.
The discipline was there.
You need that belief though in someone who can mentor you, right?
For sure.
If you could go back to a single day of your life, if you could relive it, what day would that be?
You know what? Our family has had some ups and downs, man. But when I graduated from my master's program, just being there with my sister, my nephew and niece, my mom, my dad. We haven't really taken a family vacation before. We went to Ottawa.
Nice.
I would do the graduation weekend all over again.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. You know, I'm looking forward to that. I'm graduating in October, and whatever I say sometimes about education, I'm like, when I was in my undergrad and I went to UP's graduation, I'm like, oh my God, it's real. Like this is a surreal experience.
It's real.
Like,
no, when you hit graduation, it's emotional.
You think you're gonna be cool and whatever, and I'm like, yo, this is graduation.
Yeah, it's emotional.
Yeah,
you feel it, regardless of how anti or how maybe your negative feelings towards education. Graduation will make you feel.
You feel nice. Yeah. If there was a movie on your life, what would the title read?
The Best Is Yet to Come.
Yeah. And if they couldn't get you to act in it, what actor would you want to play you?
I'm gonna out myself right now.
Anyone. They don't have to be a lookalike, but who would capture your character?
Probably Michael B. Jordan.
Hey.
Just,
I like that. If you could be any animal, what would you be?
Oh, lion for sure.
Name a song that when you hear it, it puts you in your feelings. You think about that girl from grade 2 and you just catch feelings.
Oh man, it would have to be. There's this old reggae song, man. Joy White. The first cut is the deepest.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you were stranded on an island, what 2 things would you want with you?
I would have my Bible, and I would have coconut water.
Yeah. Or the coconuts would already be there.
Oh,
right?
coconuts would already be
I'm
there.
joking. What style did you rock that you look back now and wish you never rocked?
Yo, dog. These 3X and 4X shirts.
This is the common answer. Why did we ever wear those?
I was cleaning out my closet in May, and I still had like 3X stuff. And I'm like, why did I I've gotten a little bigger since high school, but I'm like, why did I buy these things?
Especially when Sivu Play was in Westwood Mall and I got my first paycheck, it was reckless. Like I'm buying like Rockaware, I'm buying Fubu, I'm buying all that stuff.
Yeah, and they had the oversized jersey. I remember they had the rack with the long shirts. It was like $8 or $9 for a long tee.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And like the weirdest colors too.
Yeah.
Favorite food of all time?
Oh, sushi. Yeah.
What job would you be horrible at?
Oh man, probably something in healthcare like nursing. Yeah, I'm not
someone's
that
life
guy.
on the line.
Oh, yeah. I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy. God bless nurses. Shout out to nurses.
Shout out to the healthcare field. Where do you feel most out of place?
You know what? I've been in the process of learning how to golf. I still feel out of place. I can't see myself.
Is that a downtown corporate lifestyle thing? It's just like something you got to do.
It's something you got to learn, but it's like I'm not even comfortable to go to the golf courses yet. Right? I'm still at the driving range. I don't see myself being comfortable at the golf courses yet. You know?
Okay. Yeah. When you die, what would you want your biggest legacy that you leave behind? When people think of Leo Bailey, what do they want to say? What do you want people to say?
That he was selfless. Yeah, selfless and always pursuing what God had in store. Yeah.
Last question. If your life was a book, what's the title of the current chapter of your life right now? If you could put a title to it.
The best is yet to come.
All right.
Fire.
Title of your podcast. All right. So you survived rapid fire. It's that time for guest corner. So you can shout out anything you got going on, any announcements you want to make, and maybe just some last encouragement to our listeners or our viewers.
Yeah, for sure. So, first of all, only here by the grace of God, very thankful for how far he's brought us. And I say us, Dre and Matt too, because I know definitely the best is yet to come. I know God is gonna blow our minds. My favorite verse is Ephesians 3:20. He's gonna exceed all our expectations, and this is the beginning of mind-blowing things. Shout out to MA, obviously, Community Center, Swag, all of the Mandem, Omar Marquez, Jesse, Jared, Miles. I know you're doing your thing with Swag too. Shout out to my family, shout out to my church, Impact Lives Church, my youth crew at Impact Lives. Follow us at Impact Lives on IG, follow at Youth of Impact on IG as well.
We'll drop it in the bio too.
Yeah, for sure, man. Shout out to my mom's oxtail for holding it down on Sundays.
Real community talks.
Yeah, real community talks right here, man. Shout out to KP, Naki, the Humble Beginnings on Mount Olive, and John D. Parker and Smithfield. I've worked many part-time jobs. Shout out to the Wonderland crew. Shout out to the Fortinos crew.
Deep with this.
The ACC crew as well. The Logic Group crew. I think all of the West End worked at the Logic
Everyone
Group.
Everyone who was shooting in the gym.
was right at the Logic Group. This is just an encouragement that you don't arrive somewhere overnight and people see me today, but it's only by God's grace that we are where we are today. Nice. And it's a process, and God takes you through trials and tribulations to prepare you for greater, right? He crushes you to prepare you for a bigger anointing, right? And it's from glory to glory, and it's a process. So just encouraging those out there that you may feel discouraged, you may feel down, right? But just stay faithful. As long as you have your faith, it is well, right? And one of the things, Matt, I always say is you always got to treat others the way you want to be treated, right? Facts. You got to, loving your neighbor should be taken out to the streets, right? It's not just in church, not just at home. It should be it should be one of the pillars.
Even on road when you're driving,
even
and
on
someone
road
cuts
when
you
you're
off.
driving. Yo, real talks. A few weeks ago,
This is me.
a few weeks ago, I had a little road rage thing. I had to turn back and apologize to the lady.
Wow.
Yo, that was instant conviction.
Wow.
Yeah, I had to turn back. Listen, I'm sorry, it's not my style. And you know, they were really appreciative, but I'm like, yo, we have to be ambassadors. You know what I mean? You can't be out there.
We got to be the word that became flesh.
We have to be the word that became flesh every day, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, that's my encouragement to those out there in the body. You know, it's a journey, this walk with Christ. We do have to strive to be that image of Christ. And it takes time. It takes time. But, you know, the way God works is if we strive to be in that image of Christ, he will always meet us halfway. You know?
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate that, man. So before we conclude, one thing I like to do on the show is give you guys a word of encouragement, just because you're busy people, you're doing a lot of things, but sometimes you don't slow down to hear it, and sometimes we could be way too humble that we don't hear it sometimes. But one thing that actually, you know, to start with, even with that car thing, is I like your humility. You're not someone who's like, oh, I'm at RBC. Like me and Jay were talking about this. Like, you know, people will be like on their Snapchat, they're like, oh, check out my new. Like, you're not going and be like, I'm an RBC guy, I'm doing this. You're humble, right? And your actions speak louder for your words, and I think than your words. And the first time that we met at the graduation, we were eating and talking, and I'm like I asked you if you're a Christian because I'm like, I can just sense that this guy's a Christian. But like, even in the way that you talked and the way that you spoke about swag, like there's a humility about you that I think is going to get you into doors that normally people wouldn't be able to get into.
I receive that, man.
I think that you're setting an example, not just for young black men, but youth in general in Malton and Rexdale, that hard work pays off and that your environment doesn't always dictate your potential.
It doesn't have to, man.
And I think that kids and youth, females or male, need to see men like you because they need to know that it's possible.
It's possible.
I think how you make Christ-centered moves unashamed and boldly to be who you are in Christ, but be still be this super dope professional, how you mix and balance that is something that Christians need to see. It's a blueprint and a template that they need to see, because, you know, sometimes people just show the face side. Sometimes people just show the professional side, but I think blending that and mixing that is something that you do well, and just showing, like we said, how you could be righteous, how you could be ratchet, but how you could also be professional too, right?
For sure.
Because you know what? Being a steward of what God's giving us is important.
It's important.
Being a steward of your education is important. Being a steward of the money that you're being blessed with is important, right? And I think just your heart, man, heart for this community, heart for this world, heart for young people, in men especially, is something needed, because something that I've noticed in the church is a lot of men are dropping on their role to be someone who has a heart, but also to be a leader, but also to show emotion. And I think that's something that embodies you, is you're someone who could be like, man, I have a struggle here, I have a weakness, but you know, I'm in Christ and I'm good, right? But just to have men who are taking a leadership position, because sometimes I feel like that's lacking. And I'm not knocking on women who are in leadership positions. Like, we need you, but we need strong men, professional men, you know, men who are doing different things to take an active leadership and not to be inauthentic. And I see authenticity in your walk. Yeah. So I big you up for that.
Amen. Thanks, man.
But yeah, man, when we were talking, I think like we met from that event, and then we were talking on IG, and I'm like, you know what? I need to get you on the show, because I knew that the way that you were living your life is something that needs to go just beyond your close circle of friends. And I'm not saying that I have a big reach or anything. Soon time.
But
man. You know what? The Real Community Talks community needed to hear from you today. So Leo, thank you so much for being on the shirt. It's a pleasure to have you,
man. Humbling, very, very humbling, man.
Appreciate that
for sure.